It is amazing. I was so worried that Blooper Team was gonna mess it up, but thankfully they didn't. I do have some issues with it though. They went a little bit more combat focused, combat heavy. And Blooper Team has not done any combat in any of their games. So today, we're going to look at Gamespot, Silent Hill 2 Remake's biggest difference. So let's do this.
Hey folks, Kurt here. Now, the Silent Hill 2 remake is finally upon us, and while it's an incredibly faithful remake of the original, there's also a tremendous amount that is actually different. Some subtle, some not so subtle. So, in this video, we're going to look at all the biggest differences between the two. And no, I'm not getting into any conspiracies. Seriously.
Damn, I was looking forward to that.
Not doing it. No fan theories on this one. I promise. Maybe. The events of the game's story rolls out the same as the original, with nearly, and I mean nearly, all the dialogue verbatim.
Yeah, and I do like that the dialogue and the music is just so much more beautiful in this game. It was beautiful in the last one, but they modernized it. So with this one here, you still got the essence, the heart and soul of the game.
Some lines of dialogue, while the same...
And I see people freaking out as well. Angela's face in this one saying, "Oh, why does her jaw look like that? Why does she look like a man? Like, just settle down, just settle down."
Have been shifted around in the order in which they are delivered. It's subtle enough that those who are familiar with the original but may not have it completely memorized by heart may not even notice it at all.
What's the point?
Yeah, because I know, for example, spoilers again, when James has that fight with two pyramid heads, his dialogue at the end after he defeats them, or they defeat themselves, is different. It's slightly different, but adds more to the lore.
It's easier just to run. But you're the same as me. It's easier just to run.
The tweaks to the dialogue allow the conversations to feel more natural and reflect the deliveries of the actors without ever really deterring too far from the original's off-kilter feeling. The new deliveries, while still having, that weird sort of air of dreaminess to them, give the lines a different sense of weight and emotional heft than the, kind of aloof delivery from the first game.
This town, there's something wrong with it?
Yeah, I will say there are some lines that are better in the remake, but there's also some lines in the original that are much, much better and feels a little bit more humanized. Like there's some kind, in the original, I believe it's the pyramid head chase scene with Maria when you're trying to get to the elevator and you have to shoot pyramid head and blah blah blah. When you get in the elevator and Maria dies, there's more emotion on her in the original than in the remake.
And it's not just the fog either.
Is it dangerous?
Maybe.
And they made James look like a little bit more Leon Kennedy, just saying.
This town, there's something wrong with it. It's kind of hard to explain, but...
Is it dangerous?
He has such a derpy face in the original.
Maybe. And it's not just the fog either.
Okay.
It's...
Now, some dialogue changes are less subtle, however, or maybe even completely taken out. Probably, most famously...
How can you sit there and eat pizza?
Yeah, so that's been removed entirely.
Yeah, because in the remake, so he's not in the bowling place. So him and Laura are in the theater watching a movie and talking about the monsters and stuff like that. And when you go to the bowling alley, you find as a trophy, like a Sony trophy, that box of pizza that he's eating right there.
Instead, it's been traded off for something a little less hostile, but not without a sense of lingering judgment nonetheless.
At least you got your appetite back.
I think it gives the scene a much different vibe than the original, but still allures a lot from Eddie's silent reaction. Dialogue aside...
And it's very weird in this scene, because apparently he's eating from that bucket, what I'm assuming is supposed to be popcorn, but there's nothing in his hand, so he's just like wafting air into his mouth like he's eating something, but there's no actual food in his hands.
The biggest difference here is that this scene no longer occurs in a bowling alley, but a movie
Yes,
theater.
that's what I was talking
Instead,
about.
Eddie
See, look at, there's no food in his hand.
is now eating ice cream with his bare hands, which to me is a far more psychotic
Oh, I guess it's ice cream, but there's nothing on his hand. Like, there's no ice cream or anything.
move than just chilling in a bowling alley eating pizza while monsters are outside. However, him actually eating ice cream in this scene has a much deeper meaning than you probably may have realized at first glance. Notice that whenever he speaks, it's almost like his breath is freezing in air as though he's in somewhere cold, but when you look at James, that isn't the case. I think this is a really clever way of Bloober conveying that Eddie is trapped, more or less, in his sort of freezer environment that you see him in eventually,
Which, by the way, Eddie is trapped in like that freezer, like he said, like the frozen place. And if, spoilers, Angela is trapped in the fireplace. Because at the end of the hotel section, you see all the flames and stuff, and she goes, "Oh, you see them too, huh?"
explains why he would instead be eating ice cream, especially with his hands, as though he's trapped in a freezer, instead of pizza at the bowling alley.
There's nothing on his hands.
Is a direct
Oh,
correlation
this.
in which
I never even watched this, so I didn't
you
know this was
eventually
in
see
here.
Angela in a world that to her is always on fire.
You see it too? For me, it's always like this.
All of that considered, in fact, if there's any exchange of words that are most edited and altered in the remake, it's those with Eddie. Lines like,
You're not friends with that red pyramid.
so that's missing. But the obvious reasoning is that James now meets Eddie before encountering Pyramid Head in the closet. It's a subtle remix of things, but
I do like how they remix things. It makes a lot more sense, too.
not, entirely uprooting the original's flow. Instead, the Pyramid Head encounter in the remake segues directly into the nightmare or otherworldly version of Woodside Apartment.
Yeah, this is really fun because all you have to do is open that door and jump through the other door, and it's a cutscene, too. The other time you had to go, like, up the fire escape and all that stuff. And they had the scene with Pyramid Head where in the original people thought Pyramid Head was a sultan, if you will. I'll put that as a very nice YouTube word. A mannequin. And even the creator of Pyramid Head came out and said, he's not doing that. He's not, SAing that mannequin. He might be just abusing it physically, but not that thing.
Apartments, giving more implications to James's encountering of the metaphorical character. And I kind of get it. Seeing Pyramid Head, who is probably the most metaphorically symbolic being that James encounters, is now used as a vessel to push James further into this other world, which is corroborated later in the game when Pyramid Head throws James down the elevator shaft, which then transitions directly into the otherworldly version of the hospital. Anyways, back to the dialogue. After Eddie's boss fight, James no longer says the rather on-the-nose statement of,
I killed a human being.
Well, obviously.
A human being.
though I'm sure some folks will probably point out that that line is vital in the original. Bloober's approach is at times just a bit more nuanced.
Yeah,
which
because he talked about killing a dog.
I think is
And
related
then-
to the technological.
I think he said like something. There was a dog barking, and he shot and killed the dog, and then the owner came at him, and then he shot the owner.
Advancements that can capture more subtle mannerisms and body language, which does a lot of heavy lifting in these scenes, rather opposed to the lines themselves.
If you notice too, as well, every single person that's in there, whether it be James, Angela, Eddie, probably Laura, they all killed somebody. Angela killed her father because what he did to her. Eddie killed the dog and the owner. James, spoiler, killed his wife, trying to end her life with her sickness and whatnot. Laura probably killed someone too. That bastard.
you can practically still hear him saying it.
A human being.
Alright, so the puzzles are different, sort of. Some puzzles from the original return, but in totally different locations and just slightly remixed a bit.
I'll say this too. It is so much easier in the remake. They have dumbed it down, not in a bad way, but they dumbed it down so anyone can play this and beat it.
Many puzzles have been removed entirely and instead received a little wink and a nod by way of glimpses of the past. Or at least that's what they're referred to in the game's trophy list. Glimpses of the past are callbacks to the original game, notably scenes that have been removed or changed in the remake. Now, if you're a Silent Hill lore enthusiast or canon conspirator, the inclusion of these glimpses could imply that they did, in fact,
because that's where Pyramid Head knocks you out. He knocks you over that edge in the original.
actually still happen. Maybe to another version of James, thus feeding into the narrative that James has indeed been in a nightmarish loop and... Wait a second, isn't that James's dead body that Eddie is shooting over and over and over again? Alright, look, no, hold on. This is just biggest
Maybe
difference.
it's Leon.
I'm not going down a conspiracy rabbit hole. Anyway, so there's a lot of new puzzles, and I mean a lot, sprinkled throughout. So while some puzzles will ring a bell for veteran Silent Hill tours, you'll still be kept on your toes for most of it. The good news is
puzzles are very
you're still
easy.
reaching into toilets.
Yeah, this was one of the most disgusting things is it has like poop water all over his hands. Oh, it's gross.
I don't think you're gonna find your
elbow deep in the poop
Precious
water.
Mary down there, James. All right, next up, it is way longer than the original. For the average player, the original Silent Hill 2 could take somewhere between 6 to 8 hours to complete on their first run. The remake, however, had me clocking in just over 17 hours. And for clarity, this isn't because of any additional story stuff. It's actually just because the environments are far more expanded.
Yeah, because especially in the city, they have a lot more places you can interact or run into. You can even, like in the shops and stuff, break the windows and jump in, and there'd be like health items or ammo or stuff, but it doesn't actually do anything. But it makes the city feel more alive.
Buildings are even more labyrinthian than before, and even further defies any logical architectural design. In some ways, I felt as though the levels were more akin to Resident Evil 1 or 2, making the environments like mini puzzles in of themselves when trying to navigate them and unlock passageways. Bloober Team, on the other hand, gives this rather tried-and-true survival horror level design a much-needed shot in the arm of Silent Hill surrealism, making its convoluted nature more nightmarish and, at times, totally nonsensical, but in a way that supplements the game's themes and doesn't detract from them.
Yeah, and I would just say this, the combat is still janky as hell. There's some things you have to work out, but it's serviceable.
Silent Hill, the town itself, has been also expanded, not in literal size, but the buildings in which you can explore. Comparing the maps, they're basically, the same.
Yeah, they're a Happy
But
Burger.
this time around, you'll have to explore a bar, a record store, and a diner before ever entering Woodside Apartments, and that isn't to mention the optional buildings too. For context, by the time I had reached Woodside Apartments in the remake, I was already 90 minutes in.
Yeah, because there is one, I want to say there's a pet store. Because to get the dog ending and the UFO ending and all that stuff, you have to go to different stores and collect stuff. So like in the dog ending, you have to find the pet store, go into it, find half a dog key, and then in a backyard in a house, find the other dog key, put it together, and then when you get to the hotel, you open the door to get the dog ending, and then the UFO ending, you smash one of the storefronts, and you get this little gem. It's like a purple gem. And you go to different locations, and you look at it, and then it gives off a signal, like telling the UFOs, "Oh, I'm here, I'm here." And then you do it different places, get to the hotel, you get to 312, and then UFO ending happens.
Compared to 20 minutes when I was replaying the original. This is a change that can be seen in the game's design as early on as just before entering Silent Hill. where you'll need to explore a small garage in order to locate a key in order
Easiest
to
puzzle
bypass
ever.
a locked gate. Classic survival horror design logic. Now, that part is pretty quick, but it lays much of the foundation for how every environment unravels onward. All right, combat. Now, this one is
Oh, yeah, this is the one thing I hated the most about the remake.
obvious, but I think it's notable as it vastly changes the pacing and flow of Silent Hill
Yeah, because you're forced into combat at certain times in the
2
game.
in the remake. And the original combat was clunky, imprecise, and
Oh my
you know,
god, I hate those motherfuckers right there. Like those top and bottom legs. They are mofo, especially the ones that climb the walls. The ones that climb the walls and jump at you, oh my fucking god.
sometimes more a chore than an actual requirement. When I first played the 2001 Silent Hill 2, I spent most of my
That
time
part's still in the
sprinting
game.
past every possible encounter. And not out of fear or that I was scared, but because there was very little incentive or a need to really deal with it. In the remake, I wouldn't say combat is necessary. In fact, you know, I think it's perfectly fine to just
Oh, I
duck
hated
away out
those
of
two that
most
vomit on you.
encounters. But instead, this game forced me to weigh the risk of needing to actually defend myself, as enemies are far more threatening than the original. This is balanced with its all-new dodge mechanic, which gives a
Thankfully they have that dodge in there. Otherwise, this would have been absolutely frustrating.
more bob and weave sort of feeling to the combat. Additionally, James reacts with an intensity that grounds the game's actions in a pretty visceral way.
And I'll say, it is godsend that in New Game Plus, they put that chainsaw in there. Just saying, 1 or 2 hits, most enemies are dead. And bosses.
Oh, and on that note, this is more a comment on James' voice acting than his action, but James now clears his throat randomly, and it's, you know, a subtle little touch that I appreciate as a chronic throat clearer myself. Okay, excuse me. Anyway, combat changes the flow and tension of Silent Hill 2.
This one was a mofo, so they trick you with this one. So you start shooting them, you use all your ammo. You know what the trick to this one is? You know what the gimmick to this one is? Don't shoot him. There's a timer going on. Every time you shoot and hit him, the timer gets longer. So if you don't shoot him, you don't attack him, you just run around, the fight ends. That's it.
A great deal, especially in
First-
boss fights.
The first time I had that fight, I used all my ammo. I was like so frustrated.
Boss fights are completely overhauled, giving a lot more room and depth, some of which add a needed layer to their already incredible symbolism, particularly Abstract Daddy, which adds a whole new section before crumbling apart into its fleshy hell in a cell.
That one was an easy one though, because it basically has one attack where it like lunges at you. You just dodge and start shooting or hitting them. If you get the chainsaw though, god damn, that is powerful. Yeah, so a lot of these bosses, Abstract Daddy, Flesh Lips, even Eddie you can do it too. Just dodge and attack.
Each boss fight is given a few extra layers.
Even
or,
Maria,
in
too.
the case of Flesh Lip, you're only fighting 1 instead of 3, but I think it actually makes a bit more sense in the context of the boss's deeper meaning. The first combat encounter with Pyramid Head, however, happens elsewhere, in a more arena-style setting
Yeah,
than the claustrophobic
that tricks you
stairwell.
out. Yeah, that was cool. In the original, you just go corner to corner and shoot them. In this one, you don't even have to shoot them. You just let the timer run out.
Yes, it is true. Maria is no longer clad in the iconic outfit worn by one Christine Aguilera. The outfit can still be found, however, in Jack's Inn when exploring it with Maria. Obviously, this is a wink wink nudge nudge to the original fans who'd get it, but who knows, maybe this further feeds into some conspiracy that this is a loop and that outfit did at one time belong to another version of Maria. But again, seriously, I'm not getting into that. I'm not going to talk about conspiracies. Speaking of conspiracies, let's talk about Jack's Inn. While the Motel Jack's Inn did make an appearance in the original game, it was merely just used as a place to save. This time, it serves a bit more.
Yeah, you can go in all the
purpose, as it
rooms.
is required to explore before progressing to the next major story beat. For the die-hard fans out there, they'll know Jack's Inn also makes an appearance in Silent Hill 3. In fact, this game explicitly acknowledges it, which I'm sure will stir those canon fans into a frenzy.
This room There's something wrong with it. I think we should leave.
In fact, it basically implies that the two games are happening at the exact same time, but you didn't hear that from me. But
And remember, Silent Hill, there's no time, there's no difference, it's on different planes of existence.
really, this is interesting considering Silent Hill 2, while sharing the same town, has existed as a standalone entry in the series, with its story being untethered to the cult stuff from the other.
And they need, I gotta say this, they need a remake of Silent Hill 1 so badly. The fact that there was no ports, no HD upgrades for anything other than PS1, like there was just a one version of Silent Hill 1. I don't know if it's a music license or some sort of issue of contracts, but Silent Hill 1 needs a remake.
Other games. Extra scenes. While the story is completely intact as is most of the original dialogue, Bloober did take some liberties in adding just a few extra scenes. Starting with the most prominent being in Heaven's Night. In the original, the strip club was just a location you pass through, which Maria had not just one but multiple keys on hand to unlock it. Christ, lady, get on with it. Obviously, this implies that she did indeed work there.
Yeah, and there's also pictures on the wall where James can go around, look at him, and goes, "Is this you, Maria?" And she goes, "It could be if you want it to be."
Remake is far less subtle, with an entirely new scene where Maria offers taking a break just to dance for James. It doesn't go very far, but the scene does unfold into an intimate moment where James appears to have some sort of troubling relationship with alcohol. Again, it's all in those little mannerisms. Or not. Who knows? Equally, the scene gives a little more of Maria's manipulative side to breathe as well.
This place, this whole thing, it's like a nightmare. I just wanted to get away from it, even for a second. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
If you choose to explore it a little more before leaving, there's a few more not so subtle indications that James has been there before.
Yeah, you could also get on the stage and she makes a comment like, "Oh, you want to dance for me, big guy?" or something like that.
Actually, on the topic of Maria, there's just a lot more screen time with her, including an extra scene in the park before heading into the hospital. The scene makes Mary, James's wife, a bit more of a mythical figure and urban legend in Silent Hill, or in James's version of Silent Hill, that is. The extra scene certainly leaves less to interpretation in comparison to the original game, but adds a little more depth to James's delusions, making his character just a bit more complex than seen before.
Yeah, because the whole concept of Silent Hill is that the entity that surrounds the city creates it from your psyche. So like Pyramid Head, when he first went there with Mary for their trip, and he saw the paintings on the wall from the Historical Society of Pyramid Head as the person who does judgment, James manifested that as his judgment person because he felt bad for what he did to Mary. And he wanted Pyramid Head to punish him. And Silent Hill looks into your psyche, looks at what you hate, what you like, what you're scared of, and manifests it around you. This is not a physical city. At one point it was. But it's a city that's made up from your head, from your psyche.
The one that surprised me the most was the addition to another scene with Angela just before heading to the Historical Society. Whether or not it implies anything or is even necessary, I can't really decide, but it's an interesting inclusion to say the least. Okay, so this difference is specifically about the leave ending, as the dialogue and reveal has been largely rewritten.
Mary?
Wrong again.
In the remake, Maria is presented less as an antagonist in a final boss battle, and more as the coping mechanism that James manifested, that he must face.
Yeah, see, there you go.
I have missed you so much.
I've missed you too. We can finally be together. Forever.
Yeah, then she turns into a psycho ex that won't leave you alone.
No.
This rendition of the scene is more dramatic and gives a clearer character arc for James, especially in facing the murder he committed. Sure, this video has been filled to the brim with spoilers, but not so much for returning players. Except there are 2 new endings which we will not be showing in this video. All I will say is that
I've yet to see what those 2 endings are.
unlocking these have a very similar chore list to the original game, and if there's anything I could suggest is just, if you want to go into a blind, be on the lookout for new items or maybe even some places you couldn't enter before on your new Game Plus runs. Alright folks, thank you.
New places you couldn't enter before. Huh. Where would you enter on New Game Plus where you couldn't enter before? I have to look that up now
Thank you so
after
much
this
for
video.
watching. Go ahead and leave a comment if you think I missed something.
Because I have no
maybe
idea what
even
he's talking about.
Think about some of those conspiracies that we brought up, because these games love to have interpretation, and this one, in some ways, answers some long community theories in one way or another. But that's not this video. That's a different video for someone else to make.
Okay. Yeah, reaching that toilet, James. Damn, that was something.